Welcome back to another episode of the Ordinary Extraordinary Experience. I'm going through a rebranding process and I'm trying to figure out a name. Today, I've got someone I find quite interesting for a number of reasons. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name's Ocean, a founder of Ocean's Therapy. And yeah, that's all really, we can get further into me during this podcast.
Most definitely. Um, I wanted to talk to you today about like a number of things. I think Ocean's Therapy is definitely we are definitely going to have a conversation about how that came about, everything that revolves around, and what you're doing with it. I think is quite cool in terms of you're not going along the lines of just putting out content. You're actually doing live IGTVs, or were doing live IGTVs when you started, which was completely different to anything I'd seen. And I was like, how is this sustainable? And somehow you made it work every single day.
Oh God, I know that was a tough few weeks. I'm not gonna lie.
I
That
was
was
like
really
at
tough.
7 o'clock every day. I was like,
Yeah.
Ocean's live, Ocean's Therapy's live with this person, with this person, with this person. I was like, what the hell how is this
I
girl
know.
doing this?
God, that was intense. It was very intense.
But you know what I wanted to start with? We had a conversation about your faith when we were talking about a list of topics that we could talk about. And I'd never ever come across it before. Could you
hmm
shed some light on it? Could you explain your faith? And maybe
Sure.
explain how you're born into that. Your family was born into that.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a Bahá'í, so a member of the Bahá'í Faith. And really interesting, the Bahá'í Faith is actually the newest religion. We do believe that every religion was right. We still actually, so I went to Sunday school up until I was probably 13 every single Sunday. And within Sunday school, I was learning about every single religion. So we were taught Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity. We were taught everything, Judaism. But the premise is that they were all correct, but some factors of each religion change in the sense of they move with the times. So
Mm-hmm.
some things that perhaps were right in 100 years, 200 years ago, maybe now wouldn't be applicable. And like I do actually at the beginning. I was like, how is that possible? How can we believe that every faith was correct, but some aspects of them are different? But something that I like to say is that, in the sense of with any faith, it's kind of like a software update. Not saying that the previous update was wrong or anything about it was incorrect, but the fact that by updating your phone to the newest software update, like iOS 11, let's say, your phone is going to function better than it would on iOS 3 because things in regards to the phone and everything about society has changed, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's a really interesting faith because it really stems its premise on kind of like charity, love. It's very much so similar to many of the other religions that say, don't sin, love others, care for your neighbor, much like that. But there are just certain things that are different. And I think that I believe that the most important part is the fact that what I find sometimes, controversial it may be, is that sometimes religion can bring about um, aggression between people. And I really
Oh,
find
most
that sad.
definitely.
And I find that so sad because the reason we have religion is to make love, and for it, like, God doesn't want us to cause war, it's peace, right? So I find it really interesting. And I found like that the fact that why is it that it can cause so much war? And I think that something interesting is that sometimes in religions, there are actual kind of, as you said previously, there's kind of like a hierarchy, right? Whereas in the Baha'i faith, there's no hierarchy. So we're all equal. No one, you are not allowed to preach. So you can't say, oh, why is that Baha'i doing this? Why is that Baha'i doing, it's between you and God, everything. So maybe my behavior as a Baha'i would be completely different to another person's behavior as a Baha'i, but that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make me any less of a Baha'i.
That's that's interesting. It's kind of the way you describe it seems like it's taken pieces of other religions and other ways of life,
Mm,
and it's
yeah,
incorporated it all into one. What's it
totally.
been
Yeah.
like? What's it been like growing up as a Baha'i?
I mean,
Do
it's
you
been
see
so.
do you see through things through a different lens compared to your peers or your
I
friends?
think I think it sounds really, in a way, kind of it sounds different, but in the sense of, so I grew up at all girls school, and at that age, my parents were getting divorced. It was quite a tough time for me. And I think the Baha'i faith definitely gave me a lot of structure. Also, in the sense of maybe at like the age of 16, 17, everyone's just kind of veering off the path. And I think
Hmm.
although I still veered off that path, I think that my faith definitely pulled me back. There are certain things that are practiced within, certain cultures, and definitely being in the UK, there's certain things that are normalized that the Baha'i faith definitely does not agree on. And I think in a way it just brought me back down. And my parents never like so basically my mom, she's been a Baha'i from birth, whereas my dad actually wasn't, and he joined the faith for my mom, and then he was a Baha'i from that.
It's interesting that you don't use the words convert, and you said
The,
join the faith
what
instead of
join
convert.
the faith? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How
Because
like how does that work?
Well, because I think with converting, sometimes converting religion can just be a bit harsh. So, you have to completely change your religion because of, marriage, or because someone doesn't want
Hmm.
you to be that religion. In the Baha'i faith, there's not that it's not structured in that way. It's more like, it's completely your choice. You're not allowed to, that's why at Sunday school, since I was younger, I learned every religion, because as a Baha'i, your parents can't force you to be a Baha'i. You make that decision when you're 16 years old, and that is a completely autonomous decision.
You make that's interesting.
Yeah. So
That's
you're
different. Okay.
so you're not born into the Baha'i faith. So I wasn't born as a
Right.
Baha'i.
You were taught about every religion and then
Every
you
religion,
were able to
and I make my own
choose.
decision. Yeah,
What
exactly.
what made you at the age of 16, what made you choose? What was it?
Do you know what? Honestly, I just think that the principles of the Baha'i faith really,
Ah,
really, really kind of connected to me. And I think there are certain aspects of every faith that I find so beautiful. I really do. And I think if anyone tells you differently, they're lying. I just think that for me, though, with the Baha'i faith, it just felt like it was home to me. I think seeing my mom, the person she is, you know, it just, and my dad as well, and he became a Baha'i as well. And the way they practiced the faith was so beautiful, and I kind of idolized them for that. And I think the fact that they weren't kind of they didn't shun down on any other religion and say, this one's incorrect. Sometimes I think as a child, if your parents push you against something and say like this is wrong, 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 you want to go
hmm,
towards that. Whereas if they say
hmm.
everything's correct, you make an informed decision. You actually make the decision which is correct for you.
Agreed. Agreed, most definitely. And with regards to kind of growing up in a Baha'i environment, what does that look like? Like for me, growing
Mm,
up in a Hindu household, it was very much the me not I think the biggest thing was me not understanding Hinduism. And I only got that when
okay.
I went to India, and I've been to India and I spent a year there and kind of immersing myself in that environment. So from a young age, it was very much like this surface level, idle looking, way of life. I would call it a
Hmm.
religion. Um, but after coming back from India, I realized it's like layers of an onion. You start
Hmm.
with these idols because they're in human form, and as you get deeper and deeper and deeper, and you go through the scriptures, and well, it's not so much scriptures, but you begin to absorb the way of life. I explain it. It becomes less of a religion and just a way of thinking and a way of just operating. Um,
That sounds, it's so nice, that explanation.
Yeah, but you see, I'm only able to do that because I was immersed in the culture for a year. And the
Hmm.
problem is that everyone around you in India is operating at different levels. So you've got to figure it out of like where are they in the grand scheme of Hinduism. And
Hmm.
one of the things my dad used to say to me as a kid was like, "You're able to look at other religions because you're a Hindu."
Okay,
And
that's interesting.
I never understood that. And it's kind of now I take a very much I take an approach of a yogic Hindu lifestyle. So if someone has a reason and a way of doing something, so let's say your way of life um, fitted like was really good for you, and you were able to make jumps in your careers, in your family life, in relationships, and you were doing well, and you were using this kind of structure, and it was
Hmm.
working for you. And you said to me, Viraj, like give this a go, and I'm like, no, I would previously be like, no, this is my way of life. This is the way I'm going to do it. Now I take the approach of, if you've got a better way of doing something, I'm going to take your way. I'm going to try it. And if it works,
But
it
I
works.
love
And I
that.
absorb
I
that.
really love that. And I think that's what's so important about some, in some cases where a child has been told that only one religion can be, well, actually, why don't you give that child the opportunity to kind of immerse themselves as you did in the religion and understand what they love about it, and also to understand that the world is filled with so many different people, and our way is not always right. It's nice to actually
Exactly.
listen to other ways and actually be able to understand other people. And I love the fact you just said that. And it really it definitely it links to what I believe in really, really deeply.
And the fact that, in our daily lives, like I smoke shisha, and shisha
Yeah.
is not a Hindu thing. Shisha is typically an
Mhm.
Islamic thing.
Yeah.
It came from I'm pretty sure it was like the Ottoman Empire, and
Yeah. It came from the Ottoman Empire.
it was their pastime, right?
Yeah.
And I'm here smoking it, on a bi-weekly basis with my friends. I do a whole podcast where we smoke shisha and we talk, and we talk about these like out there conversations. The fact that I'm able to absorb that in my life, still look at it through this like positive lens, I love,
Mm.
because I'm able to adopt that and implement it into my way of life. And if it works, it works.
Which is
And then
great.
the moment I start feeling the effects of it, you know what? You go, okay, fine, I'm going to need a month's break, or we just go into isolation again.
Yeah. It will be forced break for you.
Forced break, most definitely. But what was it like growing up then? Like, what does a typical Baha'i family look like?
So
Is it any different from the norm?
not even like, the thing about the Baha'i faith is we don't have like a church, there's no,
Right.
we have our place of our holy place, which is in Haifa in Israel, but actually we don't have any churches. What the way we actually practice, sorry,
Why is it, sorry, I'm just jumping in. Why is it in Israel? Israel is a holy
because
land. I understand
yes,
that.
because Baha'u'llah is buried in Haifa.
And who's Baha'u'llah?
He is one of the prophets of the Baha'i faith.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why it's in Haifa. And I mean, so there's no specific Baha'i. There's millions of Baha'is around the world. Something that
Hmm.
really, really like shook me the other day. Sorry, a month or so ago, I found out. Penn Badgley from You and Gossip Girl, Dan
From,
from Gossip Girl.
yeah.
Yeah, he's a Baha'i in New York, and yeah,
No.
and he really, really like speaks very highly of the faith, and he's always advocating because Baha'is are being
That makes
persecuted in
so
Iran.
much sense from his
Really?
Instagram post.
Yes, yes, exactly, because he's a
That
Baha'i.
makes so much sense. Ah, right.
Yeah.
This makes sense.
Yeah, so he's a Baha'i, and there's so many Baha'is around the world. But what my point is that it's not like in Iran, there are many many Baha'is, but it's not just the
Hmm.
Iranian faith. There's people that British, Indian, Australian, across the globe. We have so many Baha'is, and I think growing up, it was peaceful. I think it's a very peaceful faith. There's no violence, no aggression. You're not meant to shout. It's very chilled, but also,
Hmm.
by the way, don't get me wrong, I still shouted and I still do shout. But again, that's between me and God, so it's okay. But like you can't be perfect. But I think like we went to Sunday school on Sundays. We went to feasts. So every week there's a feast, and the
Right.
feast it's basically where everyone in the community that you live in um, goes to someone's house, a new person's house every week, and you sit and you pray.
So similarly to church on Sunday,
Similarly, yeah,
or
but it
going
will be
to the
say a
mosque.
Wednesday or a Thursday,
Right.
yeah, in someone's home, and it will be an evening, and you go and you buy the most like beautiful food so that everyone does like the prayer ceremony, where everyone just says a prayer and the children are there, and then we discuss about some of the newsletter from the House of Justice, and then there's chai, which is Persian tea, is served,
Persian tea.
and yeah, exactly. And many kind of like beautiful foods are presented. It's just a very warm experience. It's very relaxed, and it's one of those things where sometimes in the feast, my cats would jump in. It's a very chilled. We're praying, but it's the room is holy at that point.
Understood. For me, with Hinduism and because they have events all through the year, right? There's
Yeah.
like Diwali, there's Holi, there's stacks of them, and
Yeah.
I've experienced them here my whole life in the UK, and I've always thought that they were a little too serious. They were never,
Right.
they're fun, but as I grew up, I realized, like, you know what, this is just getting to the point where it's a little bit OTT.
Yeah.
I went to India and I experienced Diwali there, not in my hometown where
Wow.
it comes from, and I was like blown away, like literally
Really?
blown away. I've never had that much fun doing
Oh,
something
that's
like that.
amazing.
And for me, I find the idea of God quite confusing,
Hmm.
and the entity that is God. I believe in a higher power, and
Hmm.
whatever that might be works for me for the time being. Someone, like I said, if someone gives me a reason and gives me an explanation for why something else is better in it and makes more sense, I'm going to use that definition.
Yeah.
But in the UK, I found it was too much. There was too much to do with the gods and too much like that, and it was a little bit too serious. Went to India and it was very much just like so much fun.
Yeah.
They brought back what it was like, what I'd imagined it would be like, what it looks like in the movies. And I think the question I've got for you
Wow.
is, you talk about holy and the word holy and the room felt holy. What
Yeah.
is a Baha'i's relationship with God? How does that work?
So
Because the way you
Baha'is
talk about it makes it seems like, initially I thought that the Bahá'í Faith was quite an external kind of faith, in terms of you look out, you don't look in. But the way you describe it to me now, and the way that you've been talking about it, makes it seem like it's between me and God, and it's like that is very much a reflection, and you've got to go and look inside and work on yourself. And it's this idea of, it seems like this, it's a faith where you're continuously working on yourself.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I think you'll agree with me is that, right, with any religion, it's what you make of it. So people
Agreed.
determine that one faith says one thing and then actually it says this and one says this. There is always different variations of what a faith is supposedly saying, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
with the Baha'i faith, I believe that again it's similar. There are just what we believe, and it's not, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to go somewhere to pray. Someone that, for me, I pray at night, every night. And it's not something where I read a huge passage or a huge scripture. It's not like that. For me, I just say my prayer, and they're in Arabic, and they're what I learned from when I was a baby. And I remember them chanting them when I was just literally 5 years old. So they come naturally to me. And even if I'm laying in bed, I don't need to necessarily sit up, and it doesn't need to be a whole process. But it's because it's between me and God knows that I'm speaking, and so can hear me. And so whether that be in a time of need, or whether that just be in a time of gratitude, for me, I don't believe that you should just pray at a time of need. So I'm all for praying to say, like, thank you so much, God, for everything you've given me. Thank you for.
You do it for the good and the bad, the way it
Yeah,
should
because I
be.
don't. Because if you agree with me, everyone, even if they don't believe in God, when that plane is about to crash, you're praying for God. But are you praying to God to say thank you for everything you've received in your life? Probably not.
Gratitude is super important. I feel that, like,
So
I gratitude
important.
journal on a daily basis, or I try to on a
Yeah,
daily basis. I'm still working into the routine now,
which
but
is
it's
so
life changing.
important. Yeah,
It's incredible. I think this is, you know what, this is a great moment to change gears slightly, um, and dive into oceans therapy,
sure.
and
Let's dive
like,
into it.
because you literally push out gratitude on Instagram. You push out gratitude, positivity, inspiration, everything under the sun. And I love it. And this is I do this with everyone, right? I have this piece during the podcast where I just absolutely put them up on a pedestal because I love it.
Thank
I
you.
love it.
It's
I
very
love
kind.
people doing amazing things, and I love people that do things differently. And you've done that with
Yeah.
Oceans Therapy. And like, the name just rolls off the tongue.
It's funny because actually like, as I'm not, maybe people don't know, but I've said in previous podcasts that I literally just made this in lockdown, So the name I just was sat with my mom, and she was like, just go for it. And I just thought, let's just put my name in it, because everyone, 90% of people that say, "What's your name?" and I say Ocean, they're like, "What a lovely name." It's always this, which is really kind, and I really
It was the
appreciate it.
first
But
line. It was literally the first
it,
line of our conversation.
yeah, it's just like, well, why don't I just use my name? But it's so easy. But again, like I just thought, let's just use that, and also people will remember it, and they'll also know that it's linked to me. Whereas if I did something that was like well-being something, how do people know that it's linked to me? Whereas if it says
Hmm.
my name in it, they know that I'm there creating the content for that page.
See, for me, when I was naming the podcast, I was really against using my own name initially for like
Really?
ego purposes.
Okay, fine.
And I didn't want to name it Viraj this and or Viraj that, because
Yeah.
one, Viraj is just a hard name to rhyme with. It's like there's two things: Mirage, garage, or three things: entourage. And I can't really
Entourage.
work that into the ethos of what this podcast is about. So
Yeah.
that's why I didn't choose it. But like, tell me the origins of Oceans Therapy and what it is and what you do with it and the business that it is.
Sure. So, as I said, like it was just really a stab in the dark. I had nothing to do. It was lockdown, and I'm not really one of those people that can just watch Netflix all day. I'm very, my whole family will say I'm that annoying girl that when I'm watching a movie, I'm painting my nails. Sometimes it's not good, but I just always want to be doing something. And I think I created it, and I thought, look, I'm gonna do a live. I thought, let me do something different. So, like, I don't see that many people doing lives with people, ordinary people, as well as well known people regularly, right? So, I just thought, why not give it a shot? And then I actually did a live so I didn't know anything about Instagram Live at this point because I'd never done one. So, I did an Instagram Live with the page with no content on with one of my friends, Melina. She was the first person that I did it with. And obviously, she had an Instagram base, whereas I had no one. And people started following me, and I was like, "How are people following me?" And I realized because I went live, people could then see my page, but I had no content. So I just thought, "Oh, okay, fine." People messaging me like, "Oh, this is cool," or "What is this about?" And then I started, thinking, "Okay, look, let me go down this path of
Hmm.
doing a live every single day." Now, okay, that was quite an ambitious idea because that didn't hold out. I mean, I went for a while, and I know that you were kind of with me through that process. I was doing 2 to 3 a week up until, let's say, 3 months ago, but I got a job, and honestly it wasn't sustainable. And actually I found that when I was doing them, my last live was, I think, not last Sunday, the Sunday before. The less, when I did it once every couple of weeks, it meant that when I actually did it, I could put all my energy into it. And what I kind of aimed is that I speak with people and kind of normalize the speaking of mental health issues and mental health awareness, whilst also giving tips such as kind of just like mental health tips, anxiety tips, all around positivity. I just wanted my page to be a positive place where it's not only just like images, but it's also kind of things that link to what I would want to watch myself. So I did kind of center it around what I would actually go out there and look at. So with the lives, it was something that I didn't really see anyone else doing. And then with the content that was positive on depression, anxiety, giving tips. And I just made it a thing where I would just make sure that I do it every single day. And obviously you can't keep to that all the time because stuff gets in the way. You've got a job,
Yes.
relationships, family. But I try my best. And I still get some really nice messages every few days saying, your page has really helped me get through some stuff, and it really keeps me going. It makes me feel so happy, and I'm just really impressed with the response from everyone. It's really encouraging.
I remember seeing it. It popped up on the suggested accounts to follow. I was looking
Yeah.
at it. I was like, I know this girl. I've known her from university. Um, what's this? And then literally, I remember looking at the next day, and it was like 500 followers, and then it was like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. I was like, this is
I know
growing
it
at an
went up.
incredible rate.
I know. You know what? Honestly, what I was so grateful for is I have so many great friends around me, and everyone was just so supportive, sharing everything, saying, go follow this, go see this, and it was just fantastic the way that everyone responded.
I like the energy that you put through it, and the energy that
Thank you.
comes off in the IGTVs, and also I know you started doing reels, and the energy that comes off in the
Yeah.
reels is really nice to see. And it's not, you know what's
Oh,
great
thank
about it?
you.
It's not just a motivational, inspirational therapy talking about depression and anxiety and mental health. There's also an
Yeah.
element of you showing your personality,
Thank you. Yeah. I
which
really
is
think that's
different.
important because I didn't do it at the beginning.
Yes. At the beginning, it was very much just like still,
Yes.
and you were, and with the IGTVs, you were very much kind of you were interviewee,
Exactly.
and now
Yeah.
you've grown into it, and it's very much like this is Ocean's platform.
Well, this is what I'm like. I think that is very important is that obviously you have to have that aspect of like interview kind of aspect, but at the same time, like I had some people say to me, "Well, that's not Ocean," and it's true because like I'm strange,
Oh,
I'm chatty, I'm funny, like and I wanna put that into my page.
yeah, you know what? It's great, and the fact that we live in this world where you can do that, and in lockdown, you're able to
Yeah.
just pick it up and start something, and now potentially turn it, or at some point down the line, turn it into a full-time business. I think is phenomenal.
Well, what about you? When did you start your
I
podcast?
start my podcast. So this ties in quite nicely. My podcast started not as didn't start as the extraordinary experience. It didn't start as the ordinary experience. It started as I will name this podcast later. And what it
Oh, I love that
was,
though.
it's a great name, but it doesn't mean anything. And that was the whole point of it. It wasn't
Yeah.
for me. Sorry, it
Mhm.
was for me, but I didn't want to put any effort into branding because I
Mhm.
used it as basically a way of me talking about my mental health and talking about I suffer from depression and suicide. And
Yeah, I
in
remember
my
you
in
mentioning.
my third year of university, I didn't really know how to cope with it, um, and I wasn't coping with it. It was kind of this. I was just pushing it back and pushing it back and just erasing it from my mind or trying to, rather than anything else. So the
Mhm.
podcast came about as this way of freezing my thoughts in time, freezing my thoughts and my feelings in time, so that I could then
Mm.
reflect on it because I realized that the mind can only do so much. It can only store so much information, and ultimately,
Absolutely.
it fails you. And it will always put you in a position to look at things through the best lens. It will protect you. I I
Mm.
remember the point at which I wanted to commit suicide, and that feeling, however, sorry, but not the feeling. I can put myself back where it was. I can put myself in the same situation, but the emotions are different because the brain,
Now that's
my
interesting.
theory is the brain protects you. It never wants to hurt itself. And so it will never let me do that. And now, look, you know what? I'm in a better position. I put in my self work. I journal. I meditate. I do my yoga. I go to the gym. I try and eat well. Try and not have a massive alcohol intake, although that's sometimes difficult. Um, yeah, we have our moments. Um,
Everyone does.
but that's kind of where mine started, and then it spiraled into this thing where I wanted to showcase and talk to people doing interesting things, but ordinary people doing interesting things. And now I'm kind of like, I've got this love-hate relationship with the brand of the ordinary experience. And I want to push the boundaries of what a podcast and audio experience can be. So that means taking it onto YouTube and bringing out different types of content. Like I've dabbled in YouTube. I did crypto
Mhm.
content. I did like lifestyle design type content, like mental health type content, but it wasn't ever me. And this format allows me to get across my personality. So sitting down long form content just works perfectly for me because that's
I
what I
mean,
crave.
which is which is so nice. I think obviously, again, I know we've spoken about previously about you suffering with depression, and again, I'm so sorry you went through that.
That's all right.
I think that obviously for you to have made such a incredible improvement in yourself and in your life from that is so incredible, and I do believe that from when people can turn a negative into such a positive aspect in their life, it's a real great skill. And obviously that's what you've done. You've worked on you, and
Yeah.
you've been able to now, without that experience in your life, perhaps the ordinary experience podcast would have never been.
You know what? Probably. I would have never got into
Yeah,
content. And
exactly.
I've got this attitude now of, irrespective of what it is, fuck it, let's just do it.
Amazing. I
Try
love that
it. Are
attitude.
we having a therapy session right now? Is that what's going to happening?
Well, wait, it's my automatic, like, I'm bearing down that route.
We
I
could
need
do
to
that.
stop.
We could have a live therapy session. Um,
Alive there.
but before we jump into the therapy session, it's great because I can talk about it with people, and people's automatic reaction is your reaction. It's like, I'm sorry. And in a way, mentally, I don't say it, but I'm like, I'm not sorry. I was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I'm
Yeah,
out of this rut and I'm out of this societal life script that I was following. And I've got this whole story behind it. Which is all true. I wanted the Wolf of Wall Street life, and that was going to be me.
yeah.
That's what I wanted. Retire by 40, party, 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 drugs, alcohol, women, big cars, fat houses, right?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
living in Chelsea and then, taking a helicopter to the suburbs, like living in Surrey, right? That was what I wanted. Ferraris,
Yeah.
Porsches, the lot. And my time in India kind of gave me the opportunity to sit with myself and figure out who I was, or who I'd become, and who I really was. Like, don't get me wrong, materialistic
So it
things
kind
are
of
great.
humbled you.
Yeah, in a way it humbled me, but I think the biggest thing I was scared of was, how do I live without nothing? And you go to a third
Yeah.
world country and you see people living with nothing, and you look at them and you're like, can I do that? And I got to a point where I think it maybe for a day I was able to say to myself, yeah, you could do that. You could sit there and survive without anything, begging and feeding and living off what people give you. For a single day, I thought I could do that. And then I realized that, you know what, I'm not built that way. I have an opportunity. I have a wealth of education. I come from a first world country. I'm privileged in my upbringing and my parents and everything that they've given me, their education, the things, and kind of this platform that they've put me on to go and succeed in life. And I was like, I've just got to take every opportunity that comes my way, whether it's, working with friends and, building a comedy gig, or it's, hosting a podcast and trying to make that my full-time vocation.
Yeah.
But then also having to do things that you don't like. And I'm very vocal about this, I don't like my 9 to 5. On a daily basis, I wake up and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, I've got to go to work. I hate it, genuinely. It's
Now,
the most
why
depressing
don't
thing
you
in the
change
world.
jobs?
I'm actively looking for other jobs.
Okay,
But for me,
fine.
it's very much in the situation of I'm not cut out. I feel like I'm not cut out to work an ordinary job.
Yeah.
I need something that pushes my boundaries. And the only thing that does that is creating content on YouTube. Because YouTube is
Which
by
is
far,
amazing, the fact that you can still do that.
it's great. And you know what? The only reason I do the job, and the reason that the way I squared it off in my head, is that you might wake up and you might not enjoy your 9 to 5. You might not enjoy your typical job. But for me, it pays for my other job. It allows me to pay for the
Yeah.
camera that this is on, pay for the mics, pay for the
Yeah.
headphone, pay for the whole setup. And without that, I can't sustain a living. I can't sustain the lifestyle that I want to live.
Exactly.
And I made that choice. And it is a conscious choice. It's not an unconscious choice. And I think that's the biggest thing for me.
I really like that. I mean, I think that obviously, it's important that the fact that you analyze that yourself and you come to that conclusion. And I do think that obviously the fact that you're able to still practice, because sometimes it can be very restrictive on you, when you're doing something 9 to 5 that's actually not your passion. When you want to do something that is actually completely soul aligned, it's difficult, right? But it's about taking that initiative and just taking it on the side. So at least you're having that creative output, even if it is not 100% of your output.
Yeah. And that's a great way of explaining it. That's a great way of putting it as well. Because although I don't get to use the bulk of my day is taken up with a thing I don't like. But during that time, for me, I mentally try and automate it so that I exist there, I do the job, but mentally I'm dealing with other things. Mentally, I'm
which is
somewhere else,
fine.
which is okay because the job gets done. And I try, and I do give
Yeah.
100%, and I try and give 100% every single day, show up, put in the work on myself for the job. And then for my other job, I don't even call it a side hustle. This is not just a podcast. For me, this is another job.
I love that word, side hustle. My dad always says
I
that word to me. He's
don't.
like, "You're the queen of side hustles."
I don't. I really dislike it because for me, I
Really?
maybe it's just the way I look at it and the way I perceive the word. I think people, when they talk about side hustles, they treat them with a different level of respect.
Oh, I get what you mean.
Do you
I
see
guess
where I'm
because
coming
it's not
from?
the same. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not the same from your main kind of like job. It's the
Exactly.
side. Well, you can have two side hustles. Your main job can be your side hustle too.
Yeah,
It
and
can be a
it's just my definition of it, right?
yeah,
And that's just the way I square it off in
totally.
my head. And when people were like, "No, it's for me, it's a side hustle," I'm like, "Is it a side hustle or is it a real job?" Because
Yeah,
if you want to make it your real job and you treat it like a side hustle, maybe you won't get as far with it
yeah. That's actually
potentially.
very true.
And yeah, I'm no psychologist like you, but I give my little two pennies worth here and there.
I mean, I'm not a psychologist either. I
You're
will have
not.
to train to be a clinical psychologist. No, I'm not a psychologist. You have to train to do your doctorate.
so how does a therapy side of Ocean's therapy work?
Therapy is different. So the thing is that to be a clinical psychologist, you have to do a doctorate, right?
Right.
So prior to that, you can do how many years of experience and how many years of education until you finish your doctorate. You're not a clinical psychologist. Now, a therapist is different, and also like so. For example, me personally, I'm a certified hypnotherapist because I did a hypnotherapy course. Also, I'm able to do, my coaching live sessions. Now, those coaching live sessions, technically, I'm inputting my therapy knowledge, my psychology knowledge. But because of the fact that I'm not certified clinical psychologist yet, I can't advertise as a psychologist, which is totally fine. And again, it's just waiting till my education will finish for me to be able to do that. But I always find it interesting, right? And I always think it's so strange that if I'm hel- I mean, I've spoken to probably 30 people in the last 6 months for life coaching sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And all of which have been like, you've really changed me. And I find it so crazy how that the fact that, whatever my input is, obviously it's from a psychology background,
Yeah.
right? But you're not technically you shouldn't technically be doing any psychology. Fine, as life coaching is okay, but do you see what I mean, in the sense of like it's that restriction, but I'm actually helping people. So is it not better for me to help people than for people to be struggling? And I just find that a very restrictive factor.
Right. So because you can't advertise yourself as a psychologist, you advertise yourself
Yeah, I
as
mean,
a therapist and a life coach. You're
a
legally
life
allowed to
coach,
a
yeah, a
life coach.
life
You're
coach,
legally allowed to do that.
hypnotherapist.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, a life coach and a hypnotherapist.
But
So
ultimately, the goal
so
is the
those
same
are
to help people.
exactly, yeah. It's the goal is the same, but I think people sometimes think, oh, life coaching or hypnotherapy isn't going to be as effective as a psychologist. I'm sure many psychologists are also fantastic.
Hey, when you said to me, I do hypnotherapy, one, I was like, I got to give this a go. Right. I'm like, so I've
Definitely,
got to get in a session with Ocean. And two, was the only other
yeah, for
person
sure.
I know that had hypnotherapy was Mike Tyson. And that turned him into literally one of the best
Really,
boxers ever. Mike Tyson from as a kid, I think at like the age of 18, he started hypnotherapy sessions. I might be off on the dates and the age, but they basically fed him aggression to turn him into a monster.
really. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
And
But see,
now
this is the thing.
supposedly he's going through this unwiring of like, or he's been through this unwiring of like having to unwire all of that therapy so that he
Wow.
reverts back to who he is.
Now, I find that so crazy because the thing with the hypnotherapy is you're actually speaking to someone's subconscious.
Right.
You're not speaking to them. You're speaking to
But
the subconscious
but
because you're
but
putting them.
but when you're boxing and you're in that heated environment, isn't it your subconscious reacting?
Yeah, exactly. But I find it so interesting how the fact that he's they have trained in hypnotherapy his subconscious to then unwind it from the training that they've done. It's like reverse roles completely there. But
I think
it's just
that's because
amazing.
he realized that he'd become a monster. And I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not Mike.
yeah,
I've never spoken to him, but I think like from what I understand and around his content, he was like, I became a bad person, and I didn't want to
yeah.
be
I know.
that
I
person anymore.
definitely.
Do you with
Yeah.
hypnotherapy? Like, how does that work?
So what it is
It's
putting
not. It's
the
not a like.
patient.
It's not a like a
No,
like.
no, it's not. It's not. Everyone thinks of it like, oh my goodness, can you read my mind? I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. The way it works is that you put someone into a altered state, so a state of relaxation. So, for example, when you're driving a car
Yep.
and your mind is like kind of on autopilot, so you
Hmm.
just drive and you don't think. That state of kind of relaxation and the state of kind of you're not in your own mind is what we want to get you into. And when you're in that state, we can then open up and speak to the subconscious mind. So for me, I've done it with stress, I've done it with anxiety, I've done it with its self-confidence. I actually, really interestingly, so my boyfriend is really not a believer in, well, he wasn't a believer in hypnotherapy. He's like, oh, you're amazing with what you do, but he never really thought it would work on him.
Right.
Now, a few weeks ago, he had troubles with sleeping. And I said to him, I was like, look, Yak, I'll stay with you and tell me whether or not you can sleep better. So he usually sleeps better when someone's with him. So I was like, fine. And then one night he couldn't sleep. So I said, look, let me just try my hypnotherapy script. Can you please just let me do it? And he was like, no, Ocean, I'm just not tired. There's no way I'm going to sleep. So I'm like, shh, lay down, relax, and let me do my script. I'm not joking, hand on heart. 3 minutes into my script, when your muscles twitch because you're so asleep, completely passed out.
No way.
I swear on my mother's life. And for someone that doesn't even believe in hypnotherapy, and in the morning, he woke me up at like 7 a.m. like, Ocean, you hypnotized me last night. Like, yes, I did actually. Yes, I did. So,
Yes.
I message you like, yes, it works. But and it's funny because usually I'd say you have to believe in it. But in
Hmm.
this case, he didn't even believe in it.
I love that. It's
Yeah, so it works.
when you prove someone wrong, that like
I love that
it's not
moment.
it's
It's
great.
like, ha, yeah,
It's great
it's
because
great.
you're doing it for them. Like in this case, it's your
Yeah,
boyfriend,
of
right? And
course.
you're doing it with his best
Yeah.
interests at heart, and you know it can help potentially, and he's just got to be
Yeah,
open to the
absolutely.
opportunity. And I like in any other scenario, I'm trying to think through that. If he had rung you up and been like, let me try it over the phone, he probably would have just put the phone down and been like, no, I will
Yeah,
try something
yeah.
else.
He probably would have been like, it's not working. Yeah. That's why it's really good with hypnotherapy to actually be in person,
Hmm.
because you can actually analyze the person, whether their eyes are twitching, whether they're actually focused, whether they're sleeping or they're in a state of relaxation. You can really become aware with that person,
So
whereas if you're over the phone, you can't.
what what do you use the hypnotherapy for? Is it always sleeping? Is it other things?
No, no, no. Sleeping, depression, anxiety, weight loss, smoking, the stress, the list is endless. You can use it for whatever you wish to use it for. It's just a because think about it. The subconscious mind can be spoken to about whatever topic that you wish to speak to it
Hmm.
about. So you are able to kind of decide which of those.
And you have that conversation with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then I'm guessing with regards to the life coaching aspect, they go hand in hand.
Yeah, so with life coaching, it's very, you know, think about it like this. As you said earlier in the podcast, the mind can only take so much.
Hmm.
So if you're constantly thinking about some negativity or some intrusive thoughts, you need to get those out. And some people don't feel comfortable to speak to their family or friends. So with life coaching, it's just the first half an hour. It's actually just their release. So them to just actually release to me how they feel. And then after that is when I start coming in with my techniques and coping mechanisms, and sometimes people just need to hear something that they probably know deep down, but you need to word it in a way that will actually change their perception on the fact or the matter.
Yes. Yes, I like that. I
So they
understand
probably
that.
know it deep down, but you need to be told it.
You need to find the right words that they can access and that makes sense for them.
Yes.
And that way of
Yeah.
thinking, that
It's like a new
perspective.
language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Exactly
is
that.
there a specific type of way of life coaching you use, or is it very much just the bog
The
standard?
way I think mine is very different because I think I input a lot of my kind of knowledge from my master's and my degree in the
Right.
psychology aspect. So, and also obviously the fact that I've also got the hypnotherapy on the side. I've read a lot of books on kind of like philosophy and coaching of the mind. So, it's a lot of that manipulation from each aspect. I like to think of it as an integrated way of kind of conducting life coaching. It's not just the average life coaching of like, you can do better. It's more, I'm going to give you skills, I'm going to give you techniques, and I'm going to let you rant out how you feel. And then I'm going to try and make you feel better. And I'm pretty sure I will make you feel better.
Right. I understand that. That makes sense. How do your clients respond to that? How do your patients respond to that? Do you call them patients? What's the terminology?
I mean, I personally would say clients. I just think
Clients.
it's just easier. But sometimes I say patients because I just get, when you just sometimes
You
forget in
get all
your mind.
clinical on us.
Yeah, exactly. But no client. I mean, I've always had such incredible responses. One of my clients from Canada even drew a beautiful piece of artwork to show how she felt after two of our sessions, which was kind of like it was a hand clenched. She was feeling so distressed, and after our sessions she drew the hand open again, and honestly that really really moved me, and it just made everything feel worthwhile.
Yeah.
I shared it on my page. It was just, yeah, so I think I have some really amazing responses back, and it means a lot to me.
How do you work through the more difficult cases where you're not tapping into that person's subconscious, where you're not able to access the the right parts of the right parts that need accessing for that particular person and what they want out of the sessions?
I would say that in that situation is every sort of obviously every individual case is so different.
Yeah.
But I think that when it's a harder situation for
Hmm.
the person, it's more about the fact that maybe it may take a few sessions for them to open up and for them to actually get the ball rolling with the coaching rather than it just being straight in. Some people can just already be, receptive, but some people you need to build the rapport. And I think that's the most important part. And that's something that I've built over time with clients. And that has helped a lot with how successful the sessions have been.
That's great. That's awesome. The fact that
Yeah.
you're still going through that process of, even though it might be more difficult to begin with, you're still putting in that work with that client. It's not just like I can't do anything for you after one
Absolutely.
session. I love that. I think
Yeah, it's
something
easy.
at the top of my head is, if you could go back in your education,
Hmm.
would you still take the same path that you did towards hypnotherapy, towards oceans therapy, towards life coaching?
Abs- Absolutely.
Were there
I would never
any
change
advice
it.
that you'd give to someone that's coming up, or someone that likes what you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I would never change what I did. I think for someone that would likes what I do and kind of wants to follow that path, I would definitely say, if you want to go down the clinical psychology route, do your MSc because it gives you that extra year where you can get some work experience in, and then have a couple of more years of work experience before you apply for a doctorate.
Right.
Because otherwise, it can be really belittling when you keep applying and they keep rejecting
Oh,
you.
trust me, I know
So
that
I
feeling.
would say, yeah, exactly. So I would say take a couple of years to do some work experience, but on the side, why not do a hypnotherapy course? Why not do a life coaching course? So you can still practice what you enjoy so much, whilst waiting for your education to further, basically.
Perfect. That's. I think that's some good advice. So
Thank you.
you stay using what you've learned over those years, but you add
Yeah,
on the extra year for the clinical psychology if you're interested in it.
you add on 3 extra years, so it's a doctorate of
Three.
3 extra years. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So it's a So it's
So it's 7
PhD.
years. Yeah, it's a declin. Yeah.
Is that what it's designated? Declin.
Yeah, a declin. So you'd be a doctor afterwards.
Wow, Dr. Ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Ocean. I think it sounds quite cool, to be
It's
honest with
got
you.
a
When I think about it, I'm
nice
like,
ring to it.
Dr. Ocean has got quite a nice. If I was like, oh, I made an appointment with a GP and it was Dr. Ocean, I'd be like, oh, cool. Quite like that name.
I quite like Prime Minister Viraj, so I'm working towards that.
Yeah, that sounds quite cool as well. I like that.
I like PM Viraj. I think
They've
it's got a
got
nice ring
rings
to
to
it.
it.
Exact PM Acharya. It's got a nice
Definitely.
ring to it.
It really does. They're the
Well,
aims. We're aiming high.
aiming right up there. No, you know what? That would be an interesting life goal to achieve. I'm not sure
That
the
would be
route that it would
awesome.
take, but you know what? Let's start with a podcast. Let's see if we can scale from there.
Yeah, let's start with the podcast and then we'll
Uh,
take a few steps before that and then we'll get to that
We'll
point.
get to politics eventually. We'll get to politicians on
Yeah,
here.
exactly. I'm
Oh,
waiting for that moment.
that would be absolutely hilarious. I'm not sure how I'd deal with the whole COVID situation, but yeah,
No, neither would
that would
I.
be a learning curve to say the least. What's the
Definitely.
what's the biggest thing that you've kind of had to deal with yourself when it comes to therapy? Is that something that you, because it must be weird if you suffer with depression, and I'm not sure if you do, but you suffer with depression and anxiety, or mental health issues, but then you're practicing a, well, basically a business that where you're advising other people.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that? Do you go to a therapist? Do you work on it? How do you work on it yourself when you actually know what everyone else is going to do?
Well, this is the thing. So I'm very open and honest. I think firstly, I think therapy is absolutely crucial for everyone because
Hmm.
everyone has something that they feel. Now, me personally, I actually have never suffered with depression or anxiety. My mental health, thank God, has been okay. But that doesn't say that I haven't had those blips. And needless to say, I have had those moments where I have felt kind of overriding feelings of anxiousness. Um, so I'm very careful because I would never say to myself, never say I suffer with something, because I think that there's such tender words, and so
Right.
I don't feel like that I'm allowed to say that.
Hmm.
But what I can say is that when for me, such as obviously people going through a breakup, it's not very nice, and
Right.
I think my situation where I've ever felt that I need to see a psychologist, when my parents got divorced, I saw a psychologist. Obviously, that's fine. And that was many, many years ago. But again, the only time that I've seen a psychologist since then has been when I went through my most recent breakup. And I think, it was just needed. And I would never, I would tell anyone openly, it is difficult because of the fact that I'm always preaching, be happy, do this, be that person. But of course, when you're going through that type of pain, it's so difficult because you're trying to tell yourself to do all these things, but sometimes your mind doesn't listen because
Yeah.
you're in pain.
Yeah.
It's so hard, and I think that I definitely felt those kind of anxious moments going through a breakup, and also those sad moments. I had those days where I just sit there and be like, no, no, I can't today. It's just I went through that whole thing where it was like
I can't deal with
paint by
life. Just
numbers.
leave me alone.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
need
I
myself right
literally
now.
Yeah, I tried everything. I did paint by numbers. I read Jay Shetty's book. I saw a psychologist. I dated other people. I tried everything under the sun. I ate everything, and then I didn't eat anything. Like it's it's a cycle, and I think you need to accept that love is so difficult, and it's a big kind of like range of emotions you will go through. But for me, I found accepting them the most important part.
Accepting your emotions is incredibly difficult,
It is.
especially when you have been wired in a way where, throughout your life and the life that we lead now, where you can say something and your emotions are instantly affected, and
Yeah.
you act on those emotions, and you're constantly
Yeah.
acting on those emotions, and not everyone puts in the time and takes the time to reflect on emotions. And I've been
Absolutely.
through one breakup in my lifetime that kind of, you know what, for me it was the catalyst of my depression, because I didn't know I was in love until afterwards. And then it was like, oh, you messed up here, Viraj.
Yeah. May I just say, very frequent with men that they realize after,
Hey,
in the
now,
least sexist way possible. But I'm
now
honest.
you are honest. I like it. I take no offense. If that's the stat, that's the stat. Um,
Yeah.
and you know what? I didn't know, but I'd never been in love before. And I think now I know what that feels like. And I know that it can manifest itself in different ways. So although I might be single at the moment, and getting into a relationship is not the primary priority in my life at this moment in time, I'm still open to the opportunity. I'm still open to getting to know someone. I'm still open to going through those emotions and talking. I think talking about it, especially with the other person, is the most important thing. Communication is key.
It's key.
And I know that because I didn't communicate. And now maybe I communicate too much, and I'm working through it. But it's trial and error. You miss some, you win some, and you lose some. But you have to constantly look at the situation you're in, and like you said, the brain runs on autopilot, and not run on autopilot. Like, you're another human being there that has a whole wealth of emotions. How do you know what's going on in their head? And for me now, whenever I'm in a heated conversation with someone, I pick up the phone. I don't text them. I can't. Refuse to text. And if I catch myself doing it, I'm like, you messed up here, because how do you know what that person's been through? You know nothing about their day, and now you're having an argument.
Absolutely. Yes, because you can't actually understand how someone's feeling if you're texting. You're behind that wall.
Exactly.
But if you're in person or you're on the phone, you can appreciate and empathize with those emotions. And that empathy is a huge factor. Is a huge factor.
It's like with the podcast. I insist on a video call so I can look the person in the eyes and be like, how much are you going to give me? Not ask, just look at them and be like, is this going to be 50-50? Is this going to be 80-20? Or am I going to actually have to carry this episode? And sometimes it's like that. And, people change when they're on camera. I mean, you've racked up the hours now. So Ocean on camera is the same Ocean that is in real life. But like you said, the Ocean, the first Ocean that did that first IGTV, that first Instagram Live, was not the real Ocean. It's not the Ocean that I would speak to in the flesh. So you've constantly got to work through that, but you can't figure that out if you can't see someone. The voice only tells you so much.
No, I totally agree. And I think it's really important. And again, I think something that, linking that to relationships is that communication is definitely key. And also, not only that, it's understanding, as you said, other people have emotions. If you spend your whole life only doing everything based on your own emotion, you'll live a sad life, because you can't live like that. You have to take other people's emotion into account. Otherwise, what they will give you back is negativity, or you'll hurt them.
I think you can live a happy life, but you won't
Yeah,
have
maybe.
people around you.
Yeah, you'll hurt others around. But what I mean by a happy life is, if you're in a relationship with someone and all you think about is your own emotions, are you going to be happy in that relationship? Probably not, because you're not accounting for their emotions in your day to day.
How when you're accounting for someone's emotions in a relationship, and then when you're not in a relationship, you kind of only do that with your friends and maybe your nucleus or your close-knit friends. Which do you prefer? Doing it with your friends around you, or doing it with that individual that is your partner at that time?
What do you mean? What do I prefer? Who do I prefer accounting for?
Yeah. Or is it everyone? Because you invest yourself in someone, in a single entity.
Yeah.
And then when you're single, when you're not in a relationship, you're doing that with a lot of other people. And sometimes, people have social batteries, and sometimes they deplete a lot faster than others. And when you're doing it with one person, you can see very quickly if you're getting back what you're giving.
Yes,
but when you're doing
I agree.
Doing it with a friendship group, sometimes you don't see that. It's like a lagged effect. You only see that indicator further down the line.
Yeah, and I agree. But I think answering that question, I would say a relationship, because in a relationship, I think you're a bit more honest. You know,
Right.
with friends, you're honest and you're the true person that you are. But in a relationship, you show the side that maybe you're not going to show your friends, because it's that intimate relationship. It's the side of you that no one sees. It's the loving side. And I think once you can open up and be accountable for another person's emotions in that kind of relationship,
Hmm.
I find it easier to account for a relationship's emotions, because I find it easier to be sweet, and in the sense of, you can make up for things because you can just be that baby version of you, whereas with your friends it would be a bit weird if I was a baby version of me to my friends. I mean, I think they would find that quite strange, but do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I see where you're going with it. I see
Yeah,
where
it's
you're
kind
going
of.
with
What
it.
about you?
I haven't been in a relationship long enough to give myself to a person, so I don't do the baby voice, but I try.
No, no, no. I mean, as in, I'm talking about like being cute, being
Yeah, yeah,
sweet,
I
in the
get
sense of being.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I don't know if I have that in me. I'm sure I do, but I
I'm
haven't
sure
done
you
it
do.
for such a long time that I'm probably going to have to remind myself of how that works. But I kind of operate on this way of living called radical transparency, and I try and be as
Hmm.
transparent with everyone always. Now,
That's
initially,
amazing.
initially, I thought that meant just be transparent, just be like glass. But that doesn't really work, because in actuality, you kind of have to be opaque in a way, because people have
Yeah,
boundaries and you can't overstep those boundaries. And you just need to find the
you're so
boundary,
right.
apologize for overstepping the boundary, and then just know where the boundary is. Like I've done that with my parents, my brother. Like I have quite an open relationship with my parents. Like I talk about my relationships. I talk about like what my friends are up to. Like it's not, but I make that choice. I don't keep my life
Yeah,
secret anymore, because what's the point? What's the point of lying? You just end up catching yourself in lies. I've got caught myself in a lie, and it's never fun.
yeah. No, I
But that's
agree.
just the way
I
I
really
operate.
agree.
And you know what? If I do get into a relationship, great. I did a podcast yesterday, and we were talking about Viraj and his relationships, and the kind of, I have this weird thought process when it comes to being in a relationship, and maybe that's because I've been single for so long. Um, but you can listen to it, and then we can have a conversation about it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would love to. I'm gonna listen to it.
Uh,
Definitely.
it will come out. I think it's coming out next week. I've got to edit it, but
Okay, amazing.
I'm looking forward to the journey that I will eventually go on, or I hope to go on. You know what? Marriage and all of that, it's a long way off. I thought I was going to get married at 23. Genuinely, I thought I was going to be married and have kids at 23.
Really?
Here I am at 23, and I'm like, are you absolutely crazy?
I feel that. I feel that
I
entirely.
was genuinely, I was ready. I was like, 2 kids, you know, find a partner, um, live with the parents for the time being until you can move out. And now I look back at that version of me and that thought process, and I just think to myself, how naive were you?
Yeah. Oh no, I agree. I literally feel exactly the same. But I think everyone goes through that where they believe that kind of, oh, I will be married at 23 and I'll have children. But when you actually get to that age, life goes like this. And I'm not like, I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to be selfish and selfless enough to dedicate my life to a child right now. I've too many
That's
things that I
that's
need to do.
interesting, right? But would you dedicate your life to your partner?
What do you mean by dedication?
Um, so if and this is I'm working on hypotheticals here. Um, for me, if my partner was running their own business, right,
Hmm.
and they needed to bring in extra help, or they needed someone to, if we were gonna have kids, I have no issue being the stay-at-home dad. I have no issue giving up the career that I was building in my 9 to 5 to help her pursue. I have zero ego in that. And because I feel that sometimes I don't always have a North Star. I'm finding it. It's constantly changing. Um,
Hmm.
but the goal exists of being a better version of yourself. That's kind of my North Star. That's the true purpose of being. I figure out. I think I figured out. It might change, but the point I'm making is like when you dedicate your life to someone, will you give up your like Ocean's therapy to help him pursue, I don't know, if he's running a business, running a whole clinic, to help him run the clinic? I think that's what I
See,
mean.
that's an interesting one because I believe in independent as much as I don't believe in codependency. I don't believe that you should rely on someone. I believe that you should rely on you.
Agreed.
Because I'm sorry, but I people change, and that is the facts. But that it in the same kind of situation, I would of course be more than happy to give up my job to raise my children with my partner if my partner were to pursue his career. I'd be more than happy to stay at home, be a stay-at-home mum, so that he'd be able to pursue that. However, at this age, when I'm not married and don't have children, am I willing to give up my job and my career? No.
Do you think this
That's just
Ocean?
the
Do you think Ocean at this age could have kids, or is it just a no?
no.
She's not ready.
No. I mean, well, I mean, I am very, very good with kids. And God knows if I was given a child and I had to look after a child, I would be an amazing mom. I know I would. But am I ready for a child right now? And would I be the best mother that I could be? No. And I don't want to bring children into the world right now being kind of a 50% mother when I want to be my 100% mother.
I understand
Because
that. I
childhood
understand
is
that.
so important. Childhood is like the crucial moments for any child growing up. So why would I give them a half-hearted effort of a childhood when I can give them my all?
I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
That's my opinion on it.
I
Yeah.
like it. You know what? It works. It works. I definitely couldn't have kids right now. And sure, you know what? I
Yeah.
haven't played with kids in a long time, but I'm sure I'd be a good dad.
Really?
I'm sure I'd be a good dad. I think I'd figure that one
I'm
out.
sure you would be.
I
I think you
appreciate
would
it.
be,
I
definitely.
appreciate it.
And I think when a child's, the thing is when you're given that, it's kind of interesting. It's like you just adapt. It's kind of like you adapt to the life circumstance
Mhm.
and you just flow with it. And it's important to learn how to flow with life circumstance changes.
I used to find that statement so annoying. I used to find it used to
Did
grind
you?
my gears. Go with the flow. What does that even mean? And it was only
Yeah,
until you
no.
start doing nothing and just rolling with the punches, without thinking
Yeah,
about rolling with the punches. You know,
yeah,
this fuck it attitude, this attitude that got you to
yeah,
start Ocean's therapy, of like your mum saying, just do it, just do it.
yeah,
That is going with. I think that is going with the flow,
definitely. Yeah.
and it
No, I
helps,
agree.
and it works. Here we are,
It
two
does.
people started things in a lockdown, started and just posting stuff on the internet, and now we're having a conversation.
Literally. I know. It's amazing. I mean, it's crazy how things like this happen, but here we are.
I love it, and I love everything that you stand for. And you know what?
Thank you.
I think what would be cool is if we can do a therapy session.
For sure.
Yeah, and we can have a conversation about how that would work and kind of go deep into your practices and the way that you do it, and do kind of like potentially kind of do a YouTube video on that, if that's cool with you.
I would totally be up for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
let's figure that out. Ocean, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed talking to you about your faith. I've enjoyed talking about Ocean's therapy, minus the minor hiccup with the audio. and
No,
love is a touchy topic that most people, or a lot of people, are quite hesitant about talking about. So I appreciate you talking about your breakups, talking about love, and everything that is, and giving some advice.
no, thank you so much. Honestly, thank you so much for being such a great host and making me feel so comfortable. It's a real challenge to make someone feel so comfortable on a podcast. And you've done it amazingly.
I
So
appreciate it. Thank you. I'm working on it every day. You are the 52nd episode. I think you're like the 20th or maybe the 15th guest that I've had. And so it's just this constant evolution. So I thank you for your kind words.
No, you're so welcome. You're so welcome.
I will see you soon. We'll lock in that therapy session and we'll get cracking on some content.
100%. I look forward to it.
Amazing. I'll see you soon. Thanks, Ocean.
See you, Viraj. Bye.